Okay, everybody. So welcome to our session here on studying abroad as a first-generation student. We have some of your peers who have actually taken part in enriching study away programming as Stout students. And they're joining us to kind of talk about their experiences. My name is Scott Pearson. I'm the director of the Office of International Education, and it's a pleasure to serve as moderator and pose some questions and be able to really learn a lot from fellow Stout students on how they made everything possible and what they got out of the experience. So with that being said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can see everybody's beautiful faces and ask some questions, have some good dialogue here. The first question that I'd like to pose to Monica, Shelby, and Megan is with regard to just general introductions. If you can tell us a little about yourselves, what you're majoring in, or what you actually majored in, past tense. I know some of you have graduated, and then where did you study abroad? Maybe we can start with you, Shelby.
Okay, hi, my name is Shelby. I studied abroad my junior year at Stout for a semester in Fiji back in 2013, so it feels like a while ago now. And that actually prompted me wanting to work in international education. And I was advisor at Stout for a few years. Yeah.
Excellent. And you're still involved in international education to this day?
Yes, I work at an English language school in St. Paul.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, let's pivot over to Monica.
Sure. Hi. I've also graduated from Stout back in 2019. I graduated after wind term, and I majored in family consumer science education. I actually changed my program about 7 times while I was at Stout, and I went to the study abroad program, the Scotland and Ireland program, for about 4.5 weeks over summer of 2018, so right after my junior year. And currently I'm actually working in academic advising down in Flagstaff, Arizona. So I just got this job back in about January, so about a year after graduation.
Excellent. Well, great time to start working in higher ed in the midst of a pandemic.
Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, that's amazing. So, and what made both of you make the decision to study abroad in general? You know, how did you learn about it? And then what made you decide on the destinations, Fiji and the United Kingdom or Scotland?
Well, for me personally, I knew that I wanted to study abroad at some point during my higher education experience. I didn't know how it would fit in or when or any of those sorts of things. But some of the stipulations that I had was somewhere that spoke English, just because I don't know another language. So for me, Scotland and Ireland were a pretty easy choice. They do have a very strong dialect, which sometimes can make it seem like they are speaking a different language, but it's definitely a good experience to try to get a different culture for sure. So I knew for sure that I wanted to study abroad at some point during my college career. I didn't know when. I talked to my advisor, actually was a part of Aspire when I was at Stout. So Gail, she was my advisor, and she walked me through literally everything that we could possibly do, kind of figure out what classes we wanted to take while I was there and try to fit it in before I graduated.
Great. And how about for you, Shelby? What got you excited?
Yeah, so before studying abroad, I had never been on an airplane, and nobody in my immediate family did. But right away, when my freshman year came and I was at different orientation events and had heard about, that there was opportunities to study abroad at Stout, it got me really excited. And I remember just looking into options, and it was important for me to find something that was related to my major, but also that was affordable. That spoke English and would give me a great cultural experience all at the same time. And Fiji just kind of made sense for me to do that.
Sure. And being that you're both first generation students, talk a little bit about what the conversation was like with family, when they learned about the experience. Did you have to sell mom and dad on the idea, or your family an idea, or did they embrace it? Tell us a little bit about how that experience was for you. And Monica, maybe you'd like to begin, or Shelby, either one.
Sure. So thankfully, my parents, I didn't have to sell them on anything. They were definitely asking a lot of questions, especially because it was far away in a different country. So all of the preparation for everything, I kind of spearheaded on my own, which a lot of my college experience is what I did, since we are first generation. Neither of my parents went to a 4-year college. And so just like coming to them with all of the information that I could have, like researched everything, tried to figure out pretty much all of the answers of the questions that they may have before I even brought it up to them, just to kind of show them that I was serious, and kind of say, in a sense, like, this is what I'm doing and I would like you to be aware of it, but also you don't have as much of a say, as terrible as that sounds. But at that point, it was not really having to sell them, just more or less having to inform them so they felt comfortable with it.
Sure. And how about for you, Shelby? Was it a similar experience?
Completely opposite, actually. I did have to sell my family on it, since none of them had, even been out of the state of Wisconsin, really. And I remember my mom just being really surprised, and she would say things like, "That's only for rich kids," or "That's, you've never been on an airplane. How will you know what to do?" So I remember making a PowerPoint, actually, for my mom and my two mentors, and going over everything with them about how it'd be affordable, beneficial to me, and how, I'm responsible enough to take it on. And it is a little bit more difficult convincing, family when you do need their financial support too. And so they are going to be helping you with that. So it was a bit rocky for me to try to get to that point, but and I think my mom will agree with this. After studying abroad, her and my relationship actually became stronger. And so she then let my younger sister study abroad when she went to college. So it all worked out.
And it sounds like you did such a wonderful job preparing for the experience that it led to a career, right outside of college. Yeah,
that's true.
So, neat. What were some of the greatest experiences that you had while studying away, I guess, or what could we take away from studying abroad? And either one of you could address that. Yeah.
I can go. So for me, I changed my program, like I said before, a lot. And somehow I still graduated in 3.5 years. But largely studying abroad is what really solidified what I wanted to do with my life. So at that point, I had switched from, I started in apparel design and development, switched between retail and then hotel restaurant, and then 3 different education fields, and finally landed on family consumer science. And when we were over there, a large part of what it was education based, the trip was. And so we were able to visit quite a few of the different schools in both Scotland and Ireland. And once I got into the classroom finally and talked to students and talked to teachers and figured out all of those sorts of things, and then talked to the other students that I was studying abroad with, I was able to kind of realize that I didn't want to be a teacher, which was scary, because at that point I was 3 full years into my degree. I had already changed so many times. So I had kind of given myself the idea that it's you're not changing again. You're going to finish, you're going to graduate, you're going to be done. And so when I was in Scotland, I realized that I didn't want to be one teacher in a classroom, in a traditional sense. I still wanted to work with students. I still wanted to help people for sure. But talking to the 2 faculty, because it was a faculty-led program, as well as the other teachers that were in Scotland and Ireland, I realized that there were so many other routes that I could take, especially with family consumer science being a more general degree in education. And just the different background that I had with growing up. I was in 4-H, if you guys know what that is. And so I grew up on a farm and all of those sorts of things. And having the extra experience behind that and realizing that I didn't want to be a teacher, I started talking to a ton of higher ed professionals when I got back from Scotland and Ireland, realizing that I was okay, I don't want to do this. I talked to my program lead and I was we need to figure this out because I'm supposed to student teach in spring and I don't know if I want to do that anymore. So really it was just a really formidable kind of almost a path change for me. So it definitely was formidable as an experience for sure.
That's great. And how about you, Shelby?
Yeah, for me, studying abroad was just the greatest thing I've ever done, pretty much. Coming from such a small town and a small little world, it really opened my eyes to so many things. I made great friends. I got to learn about an amazing culture. I was excited to travel more, and I did that while I was there, and then, the years after. And then, like with Monica, it made me realize what I wanted to do as a career. So my undergrad was in hospitality management. And that's why I went to Fiji to see the tourism aspect of that. And once I got back from studying abroad, I really wanted to get involved with study abroad, helping other students, and then working with international students who were here studying abroad. And so I volunteered at the OIE office. I did some tutoring and helped out with some summer camps, and that really piqued my interest as well. And so by that point, I had one more year left of my undergraduate degree. I wasn't able to change it at that point. And so then I decided to go get my master's and to be able to continue working with, within international education. So, personally and career-wise, studying abroad is, pretty much what changed a lot of things in my life.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing. And I know Megan just joined us. Welcome, Megan, our third panelist here.
Hi, sorry.
Welcome back. It's great to see you again.
Yes, it's good to see you.
Maybe, Megan, in terms of catching up, you can just briefly introduce yourself, what study abroad program or programs, in your case, you took part in as a Stout student. And then if you could also talk about, why you chose to take part in those programs and what your major was.
Yeah. So I majored in graphic design, interactive media. I was a double concentration in that. I also got 2 minors after I actually added those after I studied abroad. But I minored in applied foreign languages, focusing in German and Spanish, and then I also finished out the Spanish minor as well. I did 3 study abroad programs while I was at Stout. My first and most important, I think, experience for me was my academic year in Germany. I went to Hochschule Darmstadt for a full academic year exchange. And then after that, I did 2 summer programs in my last 2 years at Stout. So I did visual language design in Holland for 2 or 3 weeks with Robert Frere. And then I did the interculturalism and commerce with Kevin in Oaxaca, Mexico. That was 4 weeks last summer, in summer 2019. All of my experiences were really, amazing. My year in Germany, is a huge moment in my life, and has kind of changed a lot of things in my life. I added 2 minors after going to Germany, and had a lot of really awesome experiences and met a lot of really cool people. What else? Each trip kind of had its own unique, I guess, the thing that kind of changed my perspective on things. My year in Germany, I went there with no knowledge of German. I had never left the country before. I'd never even been on an airplane. So that was a whole bunch of new experiences all at once. I just kind of dove off the deep end and just went into it. My trip to Holland was just kind of a fun sort of trip. I had already been to Europe and Holland, and got to take some classes and work with my current students and stuff. And then my trip to Mexico was really kind of an eye-opening experience. I had never lived with a host family before. I was immersed in a language that I thought I knew, and then I just realized that I didn't, and realized kind of the comforts that I had in Germany are totally not there in Mexico. And that one really pushed my comfort zone, I think, the most, was my Mexico trip. But I don't know if that answered your questions, but
absolutely. Yeah, no, thanks for sharing. So what are some of the biggest challenges that you foresee as a first generation student? Like Shelby said, someone who has never even been on a plane before, in terms of wanting to take part in a study abroad experience, and that other students who may have had their parents have gone to college, and they may have traveled the world a little bit. So what are some of the main challenges that you had that were unique to your circumstances?
So for me, I was a first generation student. My parents didn't go to college. So even going to college in itself was a huge thing. And going into college, I knew that I wanted to study abroad, so I made my family aware of that throughout. But coming from a super small town, I mean, middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, I don't know a whole lot of people that have even studied abroad, let alone like left the state or the country. And so if anybody in my hometown talks about studying abroad, it's about me. It's not, it's like no one else really does anything. And my family, I mean, their first time going to Europe was all when I was in Germany. My sister, her first time flying was to come and visit me. I have a twin sister. And so her first time flying was also to come visit me, but she could do it because I had done it, because I took that leap to be able to do it. It's really just like made me more like aware of, my abilities to be able to just go jump in and do something, and my comfort zone has expanded wildly. I mean, if I hadn't have, jumped and went and studied abroad for the first time, I probably wouldn't have also moved to New York City on a whim without ever having to visit New York City before. And so now I'm here and I love it. And I mean, the first time I was here was just the day I moved here. So
Wow.
Yeah.
Excellent. How about you? Anything to add, Monica or Shelby, regarding your experience?
I'll just kind of piggyback off of what Megan said, because a lot of that applies to what my situation was with being, small town, nobody really going anywhere. So I think, it may be a little harder than some other students. You probably have to be a little bit more independent and willing to, put in the work to, do your research, make things happen. But it's still possible. It's still feasible for everybody to be able to do it. You just kind of have to take the lead and, stick with it. I can remember, getting a lot of negativity from my mom or my family about why I shouldn't do it. And you kind of just have to put it in the work to, show them why you should do it. So it is possible and it is worth it.
Excellent. Monica, anything to add?
Yeah, so I actually came from a larger town, so I'll give that perspective, I suppose. So I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio, moved to the St. Cloud, Minnesota area about halfway through my life. So a little bit of both when it comes to like bigger city and like a kind of big town. And so with that, I had travel in my background. So at that point I was kind of like itching to go somewhere new. And a large amount of my family in Minnesota, the people who did go to college, so like my cousins and all of them, they stayed within 30 minutes to an hour of home. So I was the crazy person who went 2 hours away to Menominee and Stout. And so being like pretty different from the rest of my family and realizing that I did want to explore different things. I did want to explore different places. And thankfully I had that travel background. So I was a tiny bit more comfortable, but having to do it in a sense alone because you weren't with your family or people that you knew all the time, but finding someone to rely on or someone that you could get information from, or find that one person when you go to those preliminary meetings that you're like, you're going to be my friend now. Like you and I are going to like partner up and do that kind of thing. And just be willing to ask the questions. Like, do not be scared of asking quote unquote like dumb questions. No question is dumb because everybody is coming from a completely different journey, a completely different experience. Nobody knows really what they're doing. Like as a student, for the most part, it's probably the first time that anybody has studied abroad or gone out of the state or gone out of the country, like any of those things. So everybody is on the same playing field. It's just like, think of it as the freshman year of college. Everybody doesn't know what they're doing. We're all on the same page. Just ask the questions if you have them for sure.
Excellent. One I know of the myths that our students often have is that there's no way that they can make it happen from a financial perspective. How did and I know that the financial situation from one student to another can be very, very different. But for you and your personal story, how did you make it work to make ends meet and to be able to take part in the experience? And whomever would like to start is more than welcome to dive into that one.
Sure, I can go. My mute wasn't working, sorry. So I fully financially supported myself through college. I didn't have any family assistance. So largely I was on like a large amount of scholarships. The foundation scholarships that go through Stout, like that one application is one of the best things that you can do. I didn't have any specific scholarships for my study abroad trip though. So thankfully I was able to be an RA for 2 years. So my housing was covered for a while. I was able to build a savings of sorts, having those scholarships, being able to do work study and internships during the summer and just as many different side gigs as you can find. So just like really setting your mind to something and trying to find as many different ways to make it happen was kind of how I thought of the process. It was something that I knew that I wanted to do, and I knew that I wanted to set that goal for myself. And so being able to just kind of find any way possible that I could and just making different sacrifices, which it's hard to do, especially in college, because you don't want to miss out on a lot. And so different things where your friends are saying, well, let's go out to eat. Like giving yourself kind of a limit on that and only doing it once or twice a week, or maybe only once or twice a month, like depending on where you're at with your finances, just kind of making smaller sacrifices. And it really pays off. Like literally every penny makes a difference. So just kind of finding those different little ways to adjust your everyday life to try to just like make that goal happen that you really want.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing. Megan, how about you or Shelby?
Yeah, so kind of echoing off of that as well. I mean, for my family, like even, just in general, going to college was like a huge decision. I mean, I almost deferred. I wasn't going to go because I just couldn't afford it, and a lot of that. So going into studying abroad and trying to make the decision of how to financially support myself in that. I mean, I funded myself, like I took out federal loans and I mean, that was the biggest way I funded my way through college. And so looking at a study abroad, I was able to use those federal loans to go on my study abroad trip. And because I chose an exchange program, I was paying mostly Stout tuition in the first place. There was not a whole lot of additional fees. The biggest thing that I ended up having to pay for, especially in my year abroad, was my travels. But I also had every type of side job ever. So I was saving up money constantly for that. So I knew going into, because the application process of going for a year is quite extensive. So I knew well in advance that I was going to probably be doing this. And so I was, saving for the year or two prior to that. And I also, applied for the Stout Foundation scholarships. I think not enough people take advantage of that. And I was able to get one very specifically for my study abroad experience. And I think I ended up getting a couple other scholarships and assistance. Honestly, I don't even remember at this point, but I did get some extra assistance in that. And I think there's just so many opportunities to try and fund your trip abroad that people just, you have to put in the work, and if you put in the work, then you're going to get more out of it than if you didn't. And even, the different options that you have, faculty-led trips and exchange programs, it depends on your experience and what you want, but also what you can afford. If you want to have a shorter experience, then a faculty-led trip can totally, especially if you're, paying out-of-state tuition or something, it can be totally comparable to what you were actually paying to go to Stout in the first place. And I think people just don't realize that.
Great, thanks. Shelby, how about for you?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to receive some grants and scholarships, and then used federal loans to pay for my schooling besides study abroad. And then I got a little creative when I wanted to study abroad. I reached out to some of my community groups from my hometown, like the Kiwanis Club and the Rotary Club. And I kind of gave them a little pitch about what I was doing, seeing if they could help fund or give a scholarship for that. And so I did get 2 small scholarships from both of those. And all I had to do was come back and give a presentation to their group. So it was really simple, and I think it kind of opened their eyes to, things that none of them had been able to do when they were in college. So that was really great. And then when I was finding a study abroad program, it was important to find one that was affordable. And like Megan said, some of the programs aren't really that much more than what you were paying at Stout. And through the OIE, you can see budgets through all the programs while you're picking and deciding what you want to go on. So looking at the budget for Fiji, I kind of estimated that, what I get through loans, grants, and scholarships, all I had to do was work a few extra, hours or jobs leading up to my study abroad experience. So the summer and winter before, I just kept working and trying to save that money, for extra spending money while you're there abroad. So doing a lot of the same things that they did, but there are ways to creatively find, ways to fund your study abroad experience. Great.
Thanks so much for sharing. Certainly creative. I know we just got a comment about how you were very, very creative in your financing of the experience. I want to just pause for a moment and let all the students know that are listening attentively. If you have any questions, please, by all means, use the chat feature, or you can kind of raise your hand, and we'll give you a chance to interact with our panelists as well. Otherwise, I do have a couple more questions to continue, but at any time, feel free to pose a question or to raise your hand. So, okay, you had this amazing experience, and then you returned home. And I know, Shelby, you've talked about how it had a profound impact on your career and what that meant for you. But how has it changed you, or how has being able to discuss the experience been after returning home, both within your family and within your communities? What have you seen as the result of taking part in an amazing, life-changing experience? Megan, maybe you'd like to begin. I see your head nod.
Sure. So, my study abroad experiences in total were, somewhere around 13 months of my life at Stout. So, especially in my later, the last 2 years at Stout, after returning, I added a couple minors, and I always incorporated it into my projects as a designer. And what I was doing, I always took more of a international perspective on a lot of my projects, whereas people around me never really did. And I was always connecting with some of the students that I went abroad with, and I'm still in contact with them today. But I talk about my study abroad experiences regularly, almost on the daily. I just had a Skype chat the other day with my friend Jens, who lives in Norway, who went to Darmstadt with me, and where we discussed our things. And so it's every aspect of my life is still revolves around my study abroad experiences and that travel and everything that I learned while I was abroad. In my coworkers, I work for a company that has mostly French people. And so my coworkers have all of these travel experiences, and it's really nice to be able to, bring my perspective and experiences into it as well. Most of them are from Europe. So being able to connect with them on those has always been really great. But I also know how to communicate with them from a more of a with the language barrier. My coworkers, they speak English, but they're not perfect. And so it's really interesting being able to communicate with them better. From all of I learned German and Spanish, and from my different experiences, I was able to really understand how to communicate myself to those who don't fully speak the same language. And so when it comes to my coworkers, some of my American coworkers don't understand the nuances of the French, being able to not really communicate exactly what they mean. And so it's helpful for me to be able to be an in-between. I kind of understand what you're meaning in sort of the French perspective, but also for the Americans who are just not quite putting those pieces together, hear those pieces. And so I do this on a daily basis, and it's changed my life in so many ways I can't even comprehend it. Oh, Scott, I think you're on mute.
Thank you so much. I am. Sometimes we forget that. Would anybody else like to add to that from their experience?
I can add to that a little bit. I think especially just realizing that I wanted to change while I was over there really helped me be more comfortable with listening to myself and just being more confident in myself too. It definitely increased my self-confidence by being over there, just knowing that first, I can figure it out when I'm over there. I didn't get an international phone plan, so Google Maps was not something I could use when I was trying to figure out where I was going. So pre-planning was definitely something that I had to start doing, and I definitely did that in college, of course, but it was something that I had to think much more about when I was over there. Kind of just increasing like myself, what was it? Not self-inspection, that's not the word I'm looking for, but like introspection within myself, like really figuring out how I work as a person, who I am, and then what I really want to do with my life. Just not having as many distractions as you have back over here. And then when you go back home, being able to share those experiences with other people, sometimes they just don't get it, especially if they've never had that kind of experience before, which is so hard and really cheesy to say. It's just like, oh, well, you don't understand, you've never been there type thing. But it truly is, like, it's really true. Like having somebody who has either gone on a study abroad trip or you find out that they've gone to the same places that you have, it's so exciting to find those people in everyday life, whether it's somebody that you now work with or somebody that you're making a new friend with. Like those sorts of connections, I think, are really, really deep on a different level than we normally get in everyday life, especially. So just like having those connections, and then wanting to go back, but not having the greatest opportunity to do so after you graduate is very difficult. So definitely take advantage now when you can. You do have options to like apply for jobs over there now that you have that experience. So that's a really cool thing too to think about if that's something that you want to continue within your life, is like traveling or going new places or doing something like that. You're able to continue that after you do graduate as well. Like you do get those opportunities by giving yourself this opportunity in school.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. Shelby, anything that you'd like to add?
I don't have too much different information from what they just said. What was the actual question again?
How did you find, the experience coming back from the experience in terms of the impact that it's had, and also how you're able to articulate it throughout your daily life?
Yeah. So it's, like Monica was saying, some people don't really understand or won't get it. You come back, you're really excited to talk about all of these great things that you experience, and they don't have that experience, so it's still hard for them to understand really how great or how meaningful it was. To this day, my family still doesn't really understand what I do. You tell them you work in international education, they say, "Oh, you're a teacher." So it's a constant. That was 7 years ago when I studied abroad, so it is still a constant kind of learning experience for learning how to translate your experience into something that everybody will understand. But I mean, to this day, it still affects me. It's still, something I find to be one of my greatest, accomplishments or things that I've done. Before I studied abroad, I was pretty like an anxious kind of person. And I do remember once I got there, and it was a few months in, we were talking to our on-site coordinators. And one of the coordinators mentioned how I've changed already and how I've just become more laid back and not so anxious. And so I thought that was, a nice takeaway for somebody that was being so, anxious about everything leading up to it.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing. We did have one question that came in from a student on the session, and it was with regard to the exchange experience and how the tuition and fees would apply. If it's someone who's studying out of state, it's typically the same rate that you'd be paying at Stout would apply towards an exchange experience. And I know Andrea, also on the line, has already addressed that question. But I should take a moment to say that in the broader context, I mean, there are a lot of different programs that we have. If we're talking about a faculty-led program, that is a set, cost, no matter what you pay in tuition and fees to Stout. Everybody's paying the same rate for those particular programs. And so I'm not sure if we do have any other questions, feel free to ask. I know we still have several students on the line, and this, of course, will be available for others to view at a later date. But I will continue and just kind of leave from the questions that I had. What is one of the best words of wisdom or advice that you have for your fellow classmates when they're thinking about studying abroad? What would you suggest that they keep in mind, or how they go about the process? And let's see, how about you, Megan?
Sure. So I don't know, it's hard to give people just like one piece of advice. I think, you know, I did a podcast last year where it was the study abroad cast and talking about my study abroad experience, and I had kind of a similar question. And even like, you know, I was just talking to my friend Jens in Norway about it, the same thing, and it's so hard to like come up with just one piece of advice, but you just kind of have to jump in and go for it and do everything you want to do, especially in those first few weeks. If you're like abroad for a semester, or even if it's just a few weeks, say yes to absolutely every single thing. Like I've seen a number of students who just kind of, whether it was in my year in Germany or even in my 4-week trip to Oaxaca, they, you know, were saying no and were nervous, didn't want to go do things. You know, being brave in those first couple of days, few weeks, is what's going to kind of set the pace for the rest of your trip and experience. And being able to just kind of be open-minded about a lot of things and just go into it, not knowing what to expect. And although like the anxiety, I totally understand that, like you have to, it helps you get past that. And you, in the end, are just going to be so much better off for it. I mean, there are so many examples and experiences that I have from mine that I could share about, like, if I hadn't have said yes to this one thing, I wouldn't have done this thing, and I wouldn't have had just an amazing experience. Like I tried to, or even if you something goes wrong, like there's things that something goes wrong, something is going to go right in one other aspect. I got denied from all of my classes like the first week of being in Germany. Like they were like, oh yeah, you don't speak German, like just go take a different class. And I was like, what class? But luckily I had one professor that I kind of had already known prior to the semester, and she's like, I think this class is going to be taught in English. You should go join this class. And I had no idea what this class was going to be about. There was no description or anything, so I just showed up on the first day of class not knowing what was going to happen. And the very first 5 minutes of the class, the professor goes, okay, everybody, this class is going to be taught in English because we have a few exchange students, and also we're going to be working with the European Space Agency. And I was like, hold on, wait, the European Space Agency? Like, what are you talking about? And we ended up designing a logo for a German astronaut that eventually went to space. Was this really cool experience that I still bring up in interviews to this day. But I would have never ever had that experience if I hadn't have not known German and been in Germany at the exact right moment in time. So you just kind of have to go for it with everything.
That's awesome. So your logo was in outer space.
Yeah,
awesome.
I think there's an article about it somewhere on Stout's website.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty wild. Well, thanks for sharing. How about you, Shelby?
I would say to students that if you have any interest, in studying abroad, you should do every effort to look into that. Having interest is the first step. Then you can look in to see what your options are, see what's feasible. There'll be a lot of things along the way that might tell you, oh, maybe I shouldn't, or oh, I'm scared, or I can't afford it. But for every reason that's saying not to do it, there's so many reasons to say you should and that you can. And then, like Megan said, you just got to jump in. It's okay to be out of your comfort zone. That's the way we learn and to grow and to try new things. And you don't know if you'll like it until you do it. So.
Great. Thank you so much. Very great words of wisdom. And Monica, how about for you?
Repeat everything that Megan and Shelby said as well. Completely agree with everything that they said. To add anything, I would definitely just recommend, you have to be your own advocate. You really, really do, especially as a first generation college student. If you don't know anybody, or none of your friends or none of your family members have studied abroad, you just have to find at least one person on campus that's in a leadership role that can help you work through it and that you feel comfortable asking questions. For me, that was my academic advisor, and they didn't know a ton about studying abroad because they were just a general Aspire advisor. And they were able to get me in contact with who I needed to talk to and all of those sorts of things. So just, be your own advocate. Ask the questions that you might think are stupid. Ask the questions that you might think you should know the answer to, even though you don't. Prepare yourself as much as possible beforehand, and you'll have a fantastic experience, as well as say yes and push yourself out of that comfort zone when you are there, because you're only there at this point in time, like you're only there once. You only have this experience once until you decide to do it again. And for a lot of us, it's going to be a one-time thing. And so being able to just really take advantage of the entire trip that you're able to, and just either find one person that you're like, I connect with you a decent amount, like we are going to be friends on this trip and we're going to be each other's buddies with everything. So just like finding the people that will be able to answer your questions, support you, especially if you don't have a ton of support from, let's say, family or anybody else that's like helping you through this. Just finding your people really, and being your own advocate for sure.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. And we hope that all the students that are listening in and watching the presentation will think of us as a support structure as well. Feel free to reach out to your study abroad advisors. I know we have Andrea Morse listening in and joining us for this call, Chilla Sia and myself. We'd be happy at any time to have a virtual meeting with you, given the current circumstances, or a telephone call. But there's a lot of really good information that we put forth, as I know Megan and some of the other panelists have alluded to, on our website, where we actually go through the details of the program. We might have links or videos that you can actually, dig a little deeper, and we list all the program costs, in addition to living expenses and the courses itself, or the program fees. We do indicate what we anticipate airfare to be, and try to give you a really good picture as to what the overall experience will be. We work with the academic advising unit here too on campus, as well as financial aid office too, to try to make these programs as seamless as possible. So feel free to reach out to us at any time. And again, I really thank you all so much for joining us today. I don't have any other additional questions, but I do see, Andrew, are you still on the line? And do you have any questions for our panelists, or do you want to say a few words before we close the call?
Hello. Thank you to all of you for doing the session today. I really appreciate it. You all are familiar faces, so it's fantastic to have you here and to see you here. So we really appreciate your time in doing this. And I don't have any questions at all, but for any students who do have questions, we're in the Ask an Advisor virtual booth until 10 p.m. tonight. Or as Scott said, there's other ways you can contact us through email and booking a virtual appointment. So we look forward to seeing you.
And just as kind of one closing note, I think now is the perfect time to plan for, 6 months, a year from now. So I know a lot of one of the common themes on the call today was plan ahead, right? And you can actually even start setting aside some funding right now too, to make the experience possible. So you have to look beyond the pandemic. It will be over, and hopefully we won't see another one for at least 100 years. So it's a really good time to think about and to make this as part of the educational experience here at Stout, like you all did. And I hope is that they'll take part and they'll have an amazing experience just like you. And then several years later, we'll have a panelist with our current students joining us as alumni as well. So thanks again for your time, and best wishes to all that you do. Monica, all the best at this new career in higher ed. And Shelby, I'm so excited to see that you're still working in international ed. And then Megan, awesome that you're in New York, and you took
still in the higher ed space.
You are. Okay, excellent.
Technically.
So, well, we're really happy that you're all doing so well, and it warms our heart to know that study abroad had a really meaningful and important impact on the successes that you have today. So yeah. Well, thank you, and have a great day and stay safe. And we absolutely look forward to keeping in touch with all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.